You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode, we are talking about the British psychological horror film Last Night in Soho, directed by Edgar Wright, released October 29th, 2021.
Ooh.
That is right, very recent. I can technically say last year, but but not by a whole lot.
No. I am super stoked to talk about this one because we both had similar opinions about it after seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have stayed away from watching it a second time in anticipation of us covering it. Because even though it may not be a traditional Run for Your Lives movie, we both really liked it. And I still feel like it fits.
We're going to make sure it fits because we had to talk about this one.
Yeah.
It's one of my absolute favorite movies, if not favorite movie of 2021. I don't know. I mean, Spider-Man gives a lot of stuff a run for its money, but no, this movie was just absolutely incredible. I went and saw it opening night in theaters, and it was immediately like, that was an experience. Like, it's just one of those things where I just felt like so amped up and energized getting back in my car out after seeing it in the theater and be like, I need to talk about this, and I need to, I just need to dig in. And of course it's an Edgar Wright movie, so I knew that was going to be the case. For anyone who knows me knows
that you are all about
he's
it.
my favorite director, and everything he has done is perfection. So like, I've been excited.
This is a different genre for him. He kind of shifted and did a movie that was a little bit more psychological, was a lot horror, but he brought to it the music and the thoughtfulness about the placement of the music that we're used to from movies like Baby Driver and what is that other one? Scott Pilgrim versus the World?
Mm-hmm. Just that little thing.
That little old film.
I mean, it definitely is unique for Wright as far as, say horror is not completely unique to him. I mean, he did do Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, which have some like horror aspects to them and nods, even though they are more on the comedy side of things. But there is horror aspects to those movies. But this one, I mean, is just a straight psychological horror thriller with a lot of intensity to it, but it still has the Edgar Wright flavor of, like you're saying, the music and the way he weaves the music into the story and into the shots and the way his cinematography and timing of things works with music, or even just the way that shots work, cutting from one thing to another or panning this, and it all has meaning.
Everything
you have to look
does.
for like the little messages and stuff hidden within the way that a shot is done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredible.
When I was doing the research behind the scenes for this film, I read that he had this idea and he pitched it 10 years ago. And I thought that was kind of interesting. But I feel like timing is everything with him because his movies come out at the time they need to come out. And the story is always so well done. And I think, honestly, because he's percolating on it for so long.
Yeah.
Because he also did that with Baby Driver. Like, he developed Baby Driver over quite a long time. So you can imagine he's laying in a hammock somewhere, dreaming up these ideas and building these stories in his head. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. There are many reasons why Edgar Wright is my favorite director. Many, many reasons. And yeah, so this movie did not disappoint. I had all, faith and hope in this thing when I went to see it opening night. I was like, Because I remember, telling some friends over, oh yeah, it's opening night of a movie, I gotta go. And I'm like, what are you gonna go see? Last night Soho? I don't even know what that was. Why are you going opening night? It's like it's not like a part of a series, or it's like, why are you so excited about this? Like, it's Edgar Wright. I know it's gonna be good.
Yes. When you can count on something, it's like going back to a restaurant that the food is fantastic and you're gonna get a great meal. When it comes to Edgar Wright, you know that every single piece of the film is going to be well thought out and cared for and presented in a way that brings the audience into the experience of the film.
Yep.
So I think with that, let's get into it with a few behind the scenes things that I found out.
All right.
So it was filmed in and around London, England. As we just talked about, Edgar Wright's film list goes without saying because he's directed some amazing films. I think the only one that we haven't mentioned is The World's End.
The World's End, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only one that we hadn't. And then he did that the Sparks Brothers documentary earlier this year too.
Yes.
Which was super good. It's very different because it was a documentary, but it still had some Edgar Wright humor and style in it too. And I really enjoyed that. If you want to listen to me kind of gush about that for a little bit, go check out my episode that I guest hosted in on Wilhelm, where we talked to Edgar Wright, because me and Ben had just watched Sparks Brothers before recording that, so we could chat about that a little bit too. So I won't waste too much time on here about that. But yeah, so if you want to hear more about me and my love for Edgar Wright, then yeah, check out that Wilhelm episode.
Yeah, speaking of Wilhelm, you and I guested with Ben talking about this movie on Wilhelm.
Yes, we did.
Because we were all three pretty excited about it. And it was a situation where Pake saw it and he's like, I have to talk about this movie. And Ben and I think, were on the same wavelength where we had to talk about this movie. So we did it almost not long after it came out. Like, I think it was that next week that we recorded that episode.
Mm-hmm.
So Last Night in Soho was the first film by Edgar Wright that was classified as 18 by the British Board of Film Classification.
It's kind of like their R rating.
Mm-hmm. It's the highest rating, like highest age rating. And it's mostly about kids. Like, it's for, like, there's a U, a PG, a 12A, a 12, 15, and 18. So that's something new. I did not know about it. But that is the rating that it got. It was co-written by Christy Wilson Cairns, who also co-wrote 1917 with Sam Mendes. In fact, it was Mendes who introduced her to Edgar Wright.
That's awesome. Which, random tangent that won't take long, but you want to talk about cinematography and a director who's got an eye for the incredible shots? Sam Mendes. 1917, saw that in theaters also, blew me away with the filming of that movie. Mm-hmm. Like, I haven't watched it again outside theaters because I just can't live up, I don't think, to experiencing that cinematography on a big screen.
Sometimes it's like that. When you see something, it's like, I can never watch this again because seeing it on the big screen is the way it was intended to be viewed. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to change that memory by going and watching it on even a 50-inch television. It's just not big enough.
Mm-hmm. But I do. I probably will revisit 1917 sometime soon, or eventually, because, again, this isn't a 1917 podcast, but if you know anything about that movie, I will say, go watch it if you haven't seen it. I mean, the whole thing is, it isn't one long continuous shot, but it's shot and edited to look like it is.
That is what I heard. I have not seen it yet.
Yeah.
But I have heard that it is like one continuous shot. Mm-hmm. That's how it feels.
Yes.
That reminds me of some of the stuff we saw in this film.
Yeah.
There were some definite creative things that they put into it that we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah, it makes sense that Mendes and Wright are creative kin. There's a kinship there between them.
Yeah.
They have a similar style in those ways.
Definitely. So the budget for this was $43 million. At the box office, it grossed $23.1 million. I don't think you can consider it a flop. I know that normally it would be considered a disappointment, but if you think about it, and given all of the restrictions in different states and countries as far as watching movies in an actual theater, I don't think we can judge movies like that right now. At least, for a bit longer. So this film was 160 minutes long. And Pake, why don't you deliver the synopsis?
All right. An aspiring fashion designer is mysteriously able to enter the 1960s, where she encounters a dazzling wannabe singer, but the glamour is not all it appears to be, and the dreams of the past start to crack and splinter into something darker.
Ooh, I like this one. It's a little longer, but I like it. There's a lot of adjectives and coolness that I think reflect how amazing this movie really is. Because let's be honest, we both really liked this movie. So
absolutely. It's
not a surprise.
So good.
It's not a surprise. We both wanted to cover it. No question.
Yes. So before we jump in to our deep dive and kind of really break things down and talk about characters and arcs and stories, I don't do this all the time, but I'm going to go ahead and give this forward here. If you have not watched this movie and you're listening to this podcast, usually I'm like, just enjoy it. And maybe, go back and check things out. No, this time I'm like, stop, go watch the movie first and then come back before you listen, because this movie needs to be experienced, unspoiled.
Yes.
There are so many really great reveals and twists and fun things that it was fun on a second watch knowing these things and seeing all the little hints and things that were leading you in those directions. But I really think for a first watch to see those things revealed as they're meant to be revealed at the times they're supposed to, it's mind-blowing. So definitely check that out.
Definitely. And I agree with you. It was a lot of fun through this watch, going back and looking at things differently, because I knew the story and I was just looking for stuff the entire time.
Yeah. There were several things that I went into being like, okay, I have to watch this scene to find this thing. And I need to see this. And I need to I have to see what leads to that and what hints at. And so, that made it really fun.
Also, I did, like I usually do, unless it's a movie that I have never seen, I will go and do all of my behind the scenes stuff first. And so I did with this movie. And as I was gathering things, there were a few tidbits that I found out, and it enhanced my viewing experience because I had an appreciation for what Edgar Wright was trying to do. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed it even more.
Nice.
So I'm super excited to jump into this and talk all things Last Night in Soho.
All right. So we'll go ahead and jump in. And now we're going to try our best to see kind of our style of how we do this, because it's really hard to go character by character, because it is all such an interwoven mural of a story.
It is.
And everything, all of these little pieces. It's like the fashion design that Ellie is doing herself. It's all just kind of tied and woven together. There's all these little pieces that are making one beautiful, elegant dress of a movie. And
yes. Agreed.
So it all weaves together. So that'll be hard. But I also don't want us to just try to recap the movie for you. I want us to jump all over the place and talk about things. So this is the point. Last warning. Go watch it if you haven't seen it. I don't want to spoil things because it's incredible to see on your own. But if you've seen it, if you're throwing all caution to the wind and not listening to me and going on anyway, here we go. I figured what's the best way so we're not tiptoeing around stuff and trying to recap things is throw out all the big reveals and spoilers right off at the top.
Pake.
So we know what we're getting into, and then we can talk about how we get to those places.
Yes.
So the big reveal is the stuff that's really crazy. Miss Collins is Sandy the whole time. Love that. We find out that the silver-haired gentleman, as he's credited, who we are led to believe, and Ellie believes, is the grown up. He's also grown up, but old man version of Jack this whole time, actually ends up being the vice police officer who was working to try to get Sandy out, or at least, telling her that she should. Mm-hmm. And then now, because Sandy is the one that Jack didn't kill Sandy killed Jack and all those other guys. And I guess Lindsay, which is the name of the police officer, ex-police officer at this point in the present future, I guess kind of has suspicion that Sandy might have been behind all of these disappearances and what happened to Jack, but he really doesn't have anything to go on. And so his kind of creepiness with Ellie is thinking maybe she knows more than she does, and he's digging a little bit there too. So yeah, it's a lot of really cool reveals and things like that.
And poor Ellie is just in the middle of all of it.
Right.
And she has an ability, and what I think I liked most about her character is at the beginning, she's just so full of dreams. Like, she knows what she wants to do. She has had tragedy in her life because her mother killed herself. And you just want everything to succeed for her because she is just dreaming and wanting to do things. And she's so full of hope.
Yeah, she's, the small town girl, kind of in a way, this little, from a small village on the outside who's going to the big city to, fulfill these dreams, and she has nothing but aspirations and hopes. And then she gets there, and a lot of that gets crushed pretty early on, and she starts having a rough time. But through this ability to kind of see and touch and interact with the past and with ghosts and with, supernatural elements in those ways, she finds a way to connect with this girl, Sandy. And through that, it gives her, just seeing Sandy and the way that she is so self-confident and so composed and does whatever she is willing to do. She's going to put herself front and center and believe in herself. It gives Ellie this whole newfound set of confidence where she's like, I don't care what anybody else thinks. And if Sandy could do it, I can do it. And it kind of becomes her role model.
Yes.
And then, of course, things take a darker turn, and then she starts to feel responsible for something that happened way in the past and starts looking out for Sandy. How do I fix this? I need to take Jack down, and I need to. So it kind of becomes her own personal mission. And I think that's really cool that she is able to get so much from this interaction and these things with Sandy, but it also does cause a lot of problems for her as well.
It definitely does. It is not an easy road for her. And she does have like this sensitivity because we see at the beginning, she can see her mom in the mirror.
Yeah.
You realize that she has that connection, and she's had issues with it in the past. Like, this isn't something that's new. Mm-hmm. Because her grandmother is really concerned about what happened in the past and making sure that Ellie doesn't go to London and then get sucked in and go down a dark path.
Yeah, that there's a lot more darkness that she is able to kind of tap into.
Yes.
And this world that Ellie can see and interact with, there's a lot more of it in London than there was in the little place that she's at. And so her grandmother recognizing this gift, as she calls it, to say, she says, to be able to see and, hear and experience things that other people don't. And that she's prone to being overloaded by these things. Mm-hmm. It must have happened even with just in small instances. She's, lost herself before in some little ways. And her grandmother's worried that London's going to be that 100 times.
Yeah. Like, she's going to get sucked in to this other world and not live in the present. And I think there was a lot of danger of that happening, permanently because of the way that she was ever since the first time that she experienced it. She wanted to go back. Like, she woke up the next morning and poor John wants to ask her out, and she's busy because she wants to go back, lay down on the bed, listen to records, and go back to see Sandy.
Yeah, she's like, it'd be nice, but the Sandy saga continues, and I need to be there. I have to see what happens. And then once she gets to a point where she no longer wants to see what's going to happen next, when she's like, oh, this is bad, and I need to distance myself from her, then it's too late, and it keeps coming for her night after night anyway. And then it doesn't even become night after night. Then it just becomes constant. She is living in
during the day,
like, constant bombardment of this, like, spirit supernatural world that is just every second, everywhere she goes, she can't escape it.
And it's, what's sad is she was escaping by moving to the flat that's on the top floor of this house. she was trying to escape the madness that was going on at the student housing for college. Because she was in a rooming area with some girls that weren't very nice to her.
Yeah.
And so she was trying to escape that by moving into this 3rd or 4th floor flat. And it ends up that first night that she's there, she's listening to a record. Basically, it was You're My World by Cilla Black.
Cilla Black, yeah. Which then, I love the kind of, because, we see when she's leaving her grandmother's and she's throwing all those vinyl records into her suitcase. I was like, yes, that's the way you pack. Good job. But yeah, like the Kinks and a lot of the music she threw in there makes up the soundtrack of this movie, which is cool. But yeah, the Cilla Black thing, because then whenever she's playing that record that first night in the flat and then kind of goes over to the Café de Paris, who is singing at the Café de Paris at that time? Is Cilla Black singing that song. And I think that's a really cool little just transition into that.
Yeah. It was lovely. I like how it all moved in there. Like how it all moved from one to the other. That whole opening of her going into the 60s was breathtaking.
Yeah.
I mean, it just flowed so well. And there's a little bit I'll talk about later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll probably get to that before. I think it's exactly what
you think you will?
Yeah. And I have a lot of that stuff kind of under Sandy notes, even though, because it's like I have like a section where it's just like what we see in that world. But I'm sure we will be jumping all over the place. But yeah, before I guess we get too far again into 60s, I was going to see if I have some extra notes on Ellie in the past, before she really gets onto this adventure, just so I can say them because I took them. We see this very unique. She does have some level of self-confidence in herself that, the very opening of the movie, she's wearing this like newspaper dress that she made for herself.
Yeah, it's very well crafted.
Yeah, very interesting. And then, of course, she shows up her first day to school wearing her own design that she made. Of course, she's getting shit from that, from Hurricane Jocasta and all of these other kind of mean girls. But
such mean girls.
But it says so much about her that she's got this confidence in herself from the get-go. And even though it kind of gets stifled, it's there. And then through the things with Sandy, like I said, then it really brings that confidence back out, and in a big way. And it helps because her teacher is super impressed with her. And
and
it kind of, I think Jocasta is jealous. Because she's like, no, wait, I'm supposed to be
the star.
Yeah. And
I'm only using one name. I'm not using my last name. It's just Jocasta.
I love those little moments because it shows, Ellie is a very vintage girl. Because I like how, with music, the vibes, even like her grandmother's car at the beginning of the movie before she gets on that train, like you're not really clear what the time frame is.
Yeah.
But then she gets on the train and she's got her Beats
headphones. That was the giveaway.
And it's like, oh, so it is current day. She's just very vintage, but she still has some really great headphones. She's not fully just sucked into the 60s, but she has...
No, she likes music.
An appreciation for it.
She wants to hear it clearly.
Yeah.
She wants to make sure she has the best. The very best.
Mm-hmm. And so then I love it. Talks, it's very telling about her taste, though, is that line with Jocasta, where she misses like, oh, just one line. She's like, like Kylie. And where does Ellie go? Oh, Minogue.
Minogue.
Like, okay, maybe that's a bad example. But that's
I loved it.
But it tells the two of them and kind of where they are is of course, obviously Jocasta's like Kylie Jenner, and because like what is the current time we're in? So like you think Kylie, but Ellie's like, oh, Minogue.
Yeah,
because that's where her taste is. That's where
I'm with you,
lives.
Ellie.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
So I think that's cool. But her time in the city. It starts off a little rough. Creepy, pervy cab driver.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. She was introduced to London
in
a not fun way because the cab driver seems nice at first.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, are you a model? When she talks about being into fashion and going to school for fashion design, and she explained it. And when he's trying to drive her there, she makes him stop outside the shop, and he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
It's like, no, they don't really need you down on that street.
Mm-hmm. He just has some really gross comments that I was like, too bad it's not an Uber, because 0 stars.
Yes.
But yeah, because he says stuff, are you a model? No, just fashion design. Oh, well, you have the legs for it. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. And then, he's like, oh,
No.
you're student housing. So you're just saying there's all these models and pretty girls that are living in these houses. Maybe you'll see a bunch of me around there anyway. You might have just found your first stalker. Like, that's where she's like,
that
okay,
is so
pull
bad.
over and get me the fuck out right now. Thank you. Bye.
Yes. Like, I don't even know what to say. It's even worse because he's older.
Yeah.
Like, because he's much older. And it just came off really, really pervy and gross, to be honest. So that's how she was introduced to London. She has this beautiful train ride. She gets there, and she gets the cab driver from hell.
Right. So she's like, oh, I'm going to the shop. And then she walks the rest of the way to the housing. She gets to student housing, meets Mayhem. I mean, John outside. He's...
Michael Lachau. Oh, my goodness. That takes me back, Pake. I think it was about a year ago when we covered a little movie that I love with all my heart called Attack the Block.
Yes. If anybody watched that and listened to our coverage of Attack the Block, then yes, the actor who played John in this movie was Mayhem in that movie, one of the little 11-year-olds. That was a while back, one of the two little kids, younger kids that were in that movie. Mayhem and Probs.
Oh my goodness. It was such a wonderful surprise because when I was watching the movie the first time, I looked at him and I thought, man, where have I seen you? And it wasn't until I got home and looked it up that I realized, oh my God, it's Mayhem.
Mayhem's all grown up.
Amazing. Such a nice surprise.
Yeah. But we see pretty much off the bat, he's offering to help her with her bags and things. He's a good guy. And we see throughout the movie, he's a really, really good guy.
Yes.
But just after her experience with Creepy Cabby, she's not taking any chances. She's like, no, that's fine. I got it. No. Stay out here.
Yeah. No. Stay away. Can't trust anyone. I can't trust anybody here. Pretty much that, I think, has to be our mindset at first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then meets Jocasta, who, she's a unique girl who sucks as a person in a lot of ways. That's the nice version.
Yes. Sucks as a friend.
Yeah.
Or a non-friend.
Yeah, I mean, she's it's kind of those underhanded comments while they're talking where she's making fun of where she's from and that she's wearing her own clothes and then constantly trying to one-up her in the dead mom department for some reason. It's all about, oh, I'm the one that needs all the attention. And then she's sitting there and when they go to the Toucan and Ellie's in the bathroom and Jocasta and some of the girls walk in there and she's just talking all this crap about Ellie there. It's like, oh, she's probably going to kill herself just like her mom. Don't you see the vibes? Saying horrible things about her. And it's...
Edgar Wright didn't hold back in this one. He didn't. It wasn't tongue-in-cheek. It was bitter and brutal, things that she was saying. She realizes after at least one night there was a party where they basically let her sleep leaning up against the wall.
Yeah.
And go to class without waking her up.
Right, yeah. She has to leave the room because she's intruded on by Jocasta ravaging some boy.
Yes.
So yeah, she just goes down to the common area with a blanket and headphones and barely makes it to class the next day. Yeah, like you said before. Starting rough. And then, immediately she's like, all right, so she makes the decision. Hurricane Jocasta is a storm not worth writing out, and she evacuates pretty quickly.
That's delightful. That is a good one.
and she's headed. She sees the little advert. It's a little bit more of a Britishism than what we're used to saying.
So proud of you. Good job.
for the flat, the bed sit. Miss Collins, and that's where she's gonna evacuate to. She's moving on up. Which I love that, because then that first night there is where we really start to get into what we were talking about, where she spends time in the 60s. And that's where the Edgar Wright flavor really shows. I think the first time is where you really see Edgar Wright come through in his cinematography, at least, is that, and I love it. It was fantastic to watch again. The flashing red, white, and blue lights from the bistro, going in perfect timing with Cilla Black's You're My World as she's going to bed. And then it stays red for a while as the sheets like roll over into an ocean of fabric that transports her back to the world of the 60s. It's so cool.
It's magical. It really is magical. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. I also like when she's going to a place that she's always wanted to be. She has talked about London in the 60s so much. And she's getting to actually go there. And I think she, at first, is just kind of like blown away by the experience. It just seems like a wonderful thing to be able to do. And then when she first walks down the stairs, we're seeing her looking and seeing her own reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And then it shifts to us having her look into the mirror and seeing Sandy.
Yeah, I love the play of mirror images throughout this whole movie.
The whole movie.
But especially at the Café de Paris, how they use mirrors. Because, you would get the guy, can I take your coat? Can I take... And you have the guy removing the coat on both sides from Thomasin McKenzie's character of Ellie and Anya Taylor-Joy as Sandy. And I love the way that they shoot those things because it's not reflections. And a lot of these things, they have
not reflections.
Similar looking actors that work, or when we have Sandy and Jack running arm in arm, and then you get to see in the reflection Ellie with somebody else in her arms, but it's cut in a way to where you can't see the face because there's somebody else running up the side of the other stairs on the other side of the fake mirror. And they shoot these things in those ways that are so cool. But I really love the fun fact about that scene with the coats. And I'm pretty sure this is the what you were talking about, is because you have both actresses on screen together. And so you have these like similar looking actors on both sides as reflections.
Well, they should be similar looking.
Yeah. So the guy who takes Ellie/Sandy's jackets is played by twins James and Oliver Phelps, best known as Fred and George Weasley from the Harry Potter franchise, of course. I think that is so cool.
So great.
Yeah.
That actually wasn't where I was going.
Ooh, nice.
But that is one point that I had. That's one piece of it. There's a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. But just use of mirrors, like Ellie sitting and watching what's happening, and the way that they kind of move together similarly, which you're just listening audio. I'm kind of doing little arm movements, but it's, where they place their arms up on the, like, kind of next to the mirror at the same time, with like the little taps on on the mirror. To even, like I said, when Sandy and Jack are running through the club and Ellie's reflection is running beside them. And it's so cool.
I love it. But you know what? I would go a step further with the dancing scene that we get between Jack.
That might be...
and Sandy.
My favorite scene as far as cinematography and shooting and filming goes. That was one long, choreographed, transitional scene. Yeah, it blows my mind to think. Because, we get Sandy dancing with Jack, but then they're switching Sandy and Ellie out for each other because she's experiencing this too. And they filmed it together like that, one switching out for the other seamlessly, which has like the blocking alone for this thing. The choreography and the blocking, I was like, oh my God, what goes into this? Because it literally is this one is like, they had to have been like leaning like just right under the frame to where when one person went behind Matt Smith, the next one could pop up on the other side.
Yeah. The interesting thing about that, and I might as well talk about it now because it's in my notes for production notes, but I feel like I need to talk about it now. So the choreographer was Jennifer White, and she had a bunch of ideas, and she gave them to Edgar. Edgar Wright explained everything that she had, and then she said, well, I have a couple others, and he's just like, let's do them all. He wanted to see as far as he could go with it, as much as they could do. It did end up being twice as long as they were envisioning originally, but it was one long shot with everything choreographed, the transitions, so that it would be seamless and it wouldn't break the spell of the movie. So it didn't pull you out because of the way it may have, I mean, they could have filmed things and then spliced it together.
Yeah.
However, it might have disconnected the viewer from the movie, and he didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
He wanted everyone to be sucked in and to stay there.
Yeah, and
So we did. It was so good.
Yeah, that was... I even remember, because I will talk to myself out loud, just kind of under my breath, real quietly, while I watch movies sometimes. And so a lot of times watching it the second time, preparing for the podcast, I'm like, oh my God, I love this movie. Like, this is why I love... But I still remember watching in theaters that first opening night, and that scene with them dancing and them switching in and out. Is I've seen enough movies and Edgar Wright and in film in general to kind of see when they're using these kind of tricks, to know when they're splicing and when they're really doing something. Like, I could pick up, I was like, I remember just saying out loud, like, oh my God, you're a fucking genius. Like, while watching that scene, just be like, that is incredible. I was like, that is Edgar Wright. Like, and it went from that scene with like the blanket kind of going over and the timing of the music. I was like, all right, and we're off. Here we go. And then when we get to that dancing scene, I was already mind blown. We're like, what, not even 15, 20 minutes into the movie at most. And I'm like, oh my God.
It sucked you in. I feel like at that point, when you're going under the covers and going into the 60s, he's just shepherding you into a place that is beautiful and elegant, and where the story really starts to pick up, because it's a dreamlike place.
Yeah.
For Ellie. And for her to be able to go there is just, I mean, it's something that she's fascinated by. The problem is, it's almost like a drug.
Yeah.
Where she keeps wanting to go back to get a hit.
Mm-hmm.
Only going back, she starts to realize that things aren't as pretty and crystal clear as she thought they were.
Yeah, it's on this like slow kind of build of how things are getting worse. Because it stopped, I'll kind of go through so it's more Sandy notes. But yeah, the nights as she keeps going back to the 60s, is the next one after that is Jack taking Sandy to the Rialto to get this private audition for a job. Where we get the awesome rendition of Downtown by Anya Taylor-Joy.
So amazing. It's on Spotify.
Yeah.
So amazing.
Yeah, and then the next time after that, we're seeing Sandy's big debut performance at the Rialto as a backup dancer for Marionetta in the review. And both Sandy and Ellie are both very displeased with this, obviously.
Ellie's in shock, I think. Yeah. Because when she's first looking at the marionette, it's got blonde hair. That's what we see from behind. And you're thinking, oh, this is Sandy. And then when you realize it isn't, you're just like, what the hell?
Yep. And I did like the little thing. This is before we get to the point where Jack is like pimping Sandy out. So we get a little hint of that, because Ellie is like, well, this is not what I thought Sandy's dream was supposed to be. And so she gets up and she's walking out. And while Marionetta is singing, we get the line, look who's pulling the strings now, she's singing, as we focus in on Jack talking to the other guy, as Ellie focuses on him.
And you know
the guy from the Café de Paris.
Yeah, the one that he decked because he was calling Sandy a whore and a slut.
Yeah, where it's all, that whole thing had to have been kind of orchestrated for them, like, oh, I'll get Sandy kind of in on my side by thinking that I've saved her from this horrible person and run off, but really the two guys are friends, and could have all been orchestrated. There's a lot of things in this movie that aren't spelled out and are kind of left ambiguous, this being one of them, where, was Jack planning it the whole time? Was it,
I think so. I think that's what he did with the girls.
Yeah, and so it kind of does add to, like I said, when we get this song that Marionetta is singing, where she says, look who's pulling the strings now, or just who's pulling the strings, as we focus in on Jack talking to that guy, as, Ellie kind of focuses on that as she's leaving the room. I was like, ooh, that's a good one. And then that's where you get kind of more horror in some of those ways. Because then we get the realization, because then Jack is kind of after Sandy, being like, no, you have to come back and you have to do this. I'm setting you up with this guy. He wants to take you out for drinks and then extracurricular activities after that.
Everybody else is doing it. What makes you so special?
And then we see manager is really just code word for pimp.
Yeah.
And it's this whole thing where he's doing that with that promise of, don't you want to become a star? Don't you want to be? Well, that's what all the girls have to start somewhere, and this is what you do.
These are the kind of men you need to keep happy.
Mm-hmm. And I do love that Ellie steps in just for a second. There's that little moment where it transitions and Sandy becomes Ellie, and she looks at Jack in the face and says, she said no. And then it doesn't matter because this is all played out. It's all happened. And that's, like I said, that's where we start to see horror. Not the supernatural horror, not the ghosts, not those things, but the horrors of reality. As Sandy's walking through the halls trying to get away from Jack, you have a girl on the phone saying, it's not what I expected it to be. And there's people shooting up syringes and different women performing different sexual acts on people. And this girl who's dead from an OD in one room. That's honestly very scary. Because you're saying this is the world that Jack is pulling her into.
Mm-hmm. And she was so wide-eyed and confident. And we actually watch her get beaten down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like just kind of going through all like the Sandy notes, but I like that because we're on this trajectory and I like that. So maybe Sandy first was a good idea. But because Ellie is seeing her getting beaten down and ground down, where now Ellie is now present to this kind of montage of different men that Jack is pimping Sandy out to. And we see it's just this loop and this cycle. She's dancing. She's getting drunk. She's meeting a man. She's dancing. She's drunk. She's meeting a man. And it's all giving them different names and all of them responding, that's a lovely name.
Alexandra,
every time.
Alexi, Andy, Lexi. Like, that's a lovely name. Thanks. Like, it's a process.
Yeah. It's just what she does. And then finally that last one in that montage, Alex. And then instead of, well, that's a lovely name, we get a response, no, what's your real name, love? And that is said to her by a certain policeman working Vice, who's warning her to get out of this while she still can. He's smoking. There's little hints. Mm-hmm. With that line, you're I don't have the exact quote. Yeah, you're too good out of the. Yeah, so because Lindsay says that a little bit later when Ellie is confronting him about Sandy.
Because Alex is the name that because Lindsay has this moment where he's referring to Sandy as Alex and Alex to Sandy.
Yeah, he's
like they're two different people.
Yeah, because as he's talking to Ellie there, he says, you knew Sandy. He says, well, who didn't know Sandy? He goes, I like to think that I looked after the girls, but I had to keep them in line. He goes, Sandy was special. And then he says that he thought, she was too good for it, which, is exactly what he said to her at the bar during that little montage scene, trying to convince her to get out from under Jack.
Yeah.
So it's a nice little callback that, which is really cool because most of the movie, Ellie is obviously thinking Lindsay, the silver-haired gentleman, is the older version of Jack, and we are led to believe and baited to believe that throughout the movie, too.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it is cool. There was one little scene that I noticed that kind of led me to realize maybe that wasn't the case, that they gave a little hint to that. Like I said, it's the way that they shoot things. That's while Ellie is being bombarded with all these ghosts and things, and she runs into Jack. And then, of course, then she keeps on running, and then it turns, and then Lindsay is standing there. But for that little bit of moment before, it pans to Lindsay, she runs into Jack, and then as she takes off, you see that Jack is transparent. You can see through him. Which means clearly they're not the same person. There's not the same.
Yeah.
It kind of was this way of saying, no, they are separate entities. And if you can pick up on that little hint, it's there. Maybe Jack is close to Lindsay as a way of pulling Ellie in that direction to say, hey, this is the guy you need to talk to. Here's the guy who needs the truth.
Pieces. Yeah. To put the pieces together. Because there are a lot of pieces. And we see Ellie, start when she starts working on her dress, because these experiences of going with Sandy or seeing Sandy, especially at the beginning in the pink flowy dress, we know that Ellie's inspired by the 60s.
Yeah. She's very personally inspired by Sandy, specifically.
Yes. So she wants to recreate the dress that Sandy's wearing for her class. So she starts working on it, and the teacher seems really interested and says, this vintage fabric, it's going to be hard to work with. What are you, but we see Ellie start to be confident about it.
Yeah.
And she starts working on it. But then we also see her start to go downhill, where a few days later, she's ripping pieces off it.
Yeah.
Because she's traumatized by what she's been seeing.
Yeah, because she feels a very personal, close connection to Sandy. Because, I mean, before even that, she starts using this as the inspiration for the dress, but then she even starts dressing like her. She dyes her hair blonde. She goes and buys the exact coat that she was wearing, this jacket, from the shop that's across the street from the Rialto after her and Jack were talking. She notices that what used to be the Rialto there, and now it's some massage place or something, it looks like.
It's a Thai massage place.
Yeah. But yeah, so but even her own confidence gets boosted from this inspiration from Sandy. And she's using Sandy's lines, things that Sandy would say. John drank her Coke at the party, so he buys her a new one, and he goes, "It's the least I can do." And Jack had said that to Sandy, and what did Sandy respond to with Jack? Same thing that Ellie's going to do. Well, what's the most? She's like, I don't know why I said that, but it's something that Sandy said, and she's going to try it on. She's going to try it out.
Yep. Yeah. She's starting to feel much more confident, less reserved, less timid, and it's working for her. Mm-hmm. But then it doesn't work because things start to unravel when she starts to see the ghosts of the men that Sandy slept with.
Mm-hmm. One more, her being kind of inspired by Sandy with little things that she says. I like, because Sandy's, when Jack kind of gets her this little audition and everything looks like she's, set up and this bright future's ahead of her. And then, Ellie goes and gets her hair dyed blonde, and they say the exact same thing again. She goes, I can't fucking believe it, which is again, she's just trying on these Sandyisms. She's like, what's it like to be
what's it like to be Sandy? That's who she's just gonna funnel into to be.
It's gonna have her drop 375 pounds on a jacket because she has to have this jacket. Now she's kind of dipped into her funds for school, and now she has to go get a job bartending at the Toucan. But
yes,
but it's worth it because
that
Sandy is giving her this inspiration and confidence, so it's worth it to her.
It is. Yeah, I like the Toucan bar. She goes in and has to meet with Carol, and Carol, to me, because I watch a lot of British TV, is played by Pauline McLynn, who played the caretaker housekeeper for Father Ted Crilly in the series Father Ted. And I loved that series. It was fantastic. And as soon as I saw her on the screen, I knew who she was.
That's cool.
So it was so much fun to watch her and listen to her. It's just like, oh my gosh, Mrs. Doyle. So great.
Yeah. Then Ellie goes in to get a job at the Toucan, but then also, Carol asking, do you want a drink? And she orders a Vesper from Carol at the pub. And then Carol's just like, we'll do a gin and tonic. I'll get you a G&T, but that's about all we're going to do.
Yeah, no, we don't have those drinks here.
So I think it's funny. I've never had a Vesper, much less I've never heard of it until this movie.
No.
But I do appreciate drinks, so it's definitely something I'd like to try. I did look into it. It is named that because it is first. It was like Vesper Flynn or something was a villain in a James Bond movie, because the drink was first created as something that James Bond ordered in an old 007 movie. It is straight alcohol. So what it is it's gin, vodka, and Lillet Blanc. That's it.
Well,
I was like,
Wonderful.
but I love gin and tonic, so I'm like, I probably would like that. So
You would
who
like
knows?
it.
I might have to try to find a way. I mean, gin and vodka I can get easily. Where I'm going to find a Lillet, I don't know. But I can try.
And in a future episode of Run for Your Life podcast, Pake will tell you what he found out when he tried to make this drink.
Yeah. Yeah, so you did talk, I think the transition you kind of making is, these ghosts, these spirits, these men starting to come into Ellie's life and really kind of crossing over. And I think I had kind of pinpointed the exact moment that started happening and why. And even after I first saw this in theaters, I was like at home, just like sitting and dwelling on it and thinking, and I'm just like breaking things down in my head. And I was like, holy crap, that was the moment. Like I figured it out then, like after seeing the movie, like hours later. And I was like, oh, it was because of, yeah. So basically, yeah, she gets back to the flat, thinking Sandy got away from Jack, but then realizing she didn't, because then she hears like the toilet flush and one of the men comes out and there's money on the bedside table. And the guy's coming back. He's like, oh, I know you're not asleep. You're awake. And Ellie pulls the guy's hand off of Sandy and yells at him in his face, leave her alone. And I think that's because then that guy realizes Ellie is there. And I think that is the moment where these ghost men now know about Ellie, her connection to this world and Sandy and what happened. And then they start reaching out across the gap for her for help.
Yes. And there were a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you only have to think how many times she's giving a different name and saying thanks after they tell her it's a lovely name to realize how many guys there are.
Yeah, Sandy was building up quite a body count.
She was, but we really didn't know. I mean, at that point, I'm like, I know who these men are, but why are they ghosts? And what are they doing? Like, what are they after with Ellie?
And maybe they want to kind of lead you into thinking it's like, oh, because she looks like Sandy. So they're after Sandy still. Like, there's still this kind of ghost cycle where they're like, oh, this is what we do is we attack Sandy. And maybe there's a little, not really. I guess there's really not much of that because, it's, once there's this connection and then they realize that, oh, Ellie can see what happened in the past, then she's going to know the truth. And then we can get her to finally help and get
Free
justice,
us.
That bring Sandy to justice. To where that's even at like the end of the movie where she's crawling across the floor. It's like, guys, you got to get on the same page. Cause like she's going for the phone to call for help. The landline phone that is used only for emergency calls. Nice callback. Yes. There's a lot of little things that Miss Collins said that came back that I loved. But and they're like bursting through the floor and through the walls and like pinning her down. It's like, just let her get to the phone. But I think because she had been running from them, understandably, they're ghosts and they're scary and she doesn't know why they're coming after her. But they finally were like, okay, we're forcing it. It was like, we're grabbing her and we're holding her down. And then one of them's going to come out and grab the phone and hand it to her. Help.
Help us or kill her. Yeah, help, kill her, save us. Those were the words that the one ghost said.
Yeah, which you do hear the help in the library. It's even with closed captions on. I had it on. They don't show that. You kind of have to pick up on it. It's very vague. It's like it's barely there, but it was there. Because as she's in the library looking up missing women, because she's trying to find out what happened to Sandy, but then all of these articles she's panning through are all these missing men. And it's these same guys.
Yeah. And at that time, it didn't hit me. The twist did not hit me at that moment when she's going through and seeing all of those articles about missing men. Yeah. And they weren't all, they were pretty prominent men too.
Yeah. There's like teachers and bankers and well-known people who had families and stuff. So how does Miss Collins get away with having them all as missing persons? Well, because they're not going to tell people where they're going whenever they're using
they're not
this girl that Jack has pimped out to them. Like, so nobody knows where they went. It's kind of a perfect crime.
It is. There was one really, I think, well, a cute moment that kind of turned into a not cute moment, and that is when John asks her out, and he doesn't even get the question out, and she's like, yes.
Yeah, she's like, I just need to get out of the house. I need to not be home, not be there. And then that's where she learns, unfortunately, it doesn't matter whether she's there or not now. Her connection is too strong to where they're going to find her anywhere she goes.
Wherever she is. Yeah, he decides that they're going to go as ghosts, and his thought is, why not haunt this party with me?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was adorable. But they get there. Jocasta, I'm quite sure they drugged her drink, her and John's drinks. And
yeah, that's another ambiguous open ending thing where they kind of hint at it, but they don't give you that answer.
No, they don't show us.
Of course, you kind of wonder maybe they did, because something was off mentally with Ellie, because that's what causes the big misunderstanding of what she sees from the past. Because then that night, while she's with John, because she doesn't want to be alone, so she invites him back to break Miss Collins' rule of no male visitors.
He does say he can keep her up.
Mm-hmm.
Those were his words. And then he starts laughing and says, why did I say that?
Right.
It was adorable.
Yeah, but it doesn't even matter if she's asleep now. Yeah, but I think because then when she sees this vision, she sees what happens. Maybe it was, if Jocasta had drugged her, then it's going to flip things a little bit. So instead of Sandy killing Jack, for some reason there's this crossed wire and she sees Jack killing Sandy instead.
Yeah, and she kind of screams, and Miss Collins, aka Sandy, chases John out of the house. And then the next morning, after Ellie is apologizing to Miss Collins, she still is seeing ghosts on the stairs. Like, they're all still there. And she goes to class like normal. But then she's seeing Sandy with a slit throat in the place of the model that she's actually fitting the dress on.
Yeah.
And she just can't get away. I think things just are beyond, at that point, all she can handle. So she decides to go to the police.
Mm-hmm. After almost stabbing Jocasta in the face with a pair of scissors.
Yes. Real good. John saved the day on that one.
Yeah. Could have gone a lot worse. But yeah, she's this... And it's a big plot point there of her going to the police. Of course, they're all laughing at her and thinking she's schizophrenic and crazy, asking her, is there mental illness, history of mental illness in your family? And were you on drugs? You were at a party, you said. So, and there's all these things. But there's the one officer who gives her the benefit of the doubt and kind of says she'll take note of the incident. She'll look into, see if she can find anything, which then leads Ellie to go to the library, kind of see for herself. But, then we do see this officer really, it was saying the right thing to Ellie, but also was kind of in the same camp of thinking, maybe something's off, because we find out she goes to Miss Collins' place to do a welfare check on Ellie and make sure things are good at where she's living, which then lets Miss Collins Sandy know, that Ellie knows more than she thinks and realizes, when she's asking me about Sandy and did somebody die in this room, I think Miss Collins makes that play and then is like, I don't know what she knows, but she's on to me, or she knows more than she should. And I have to take this out. I can't let her know more.
Yeah, you can't. So Ellie runs out after the incident at the library.
Yeah.
And she
just keeps getting she keeps getting bombarded and bombarded by all of these ghosts. And finally made it to this point where she has Sandy yelling at her to leave her alone, and she falls out into the alleyway in the rain and then kind of snaps out of it and everything's gone. But then she sees who she believes at the time, and we, as first-time viewers, are led to believe at the time
is Jack.
Is the older version of Jack. And so she goes after him. She's going to question him. She's going to, when she talked to the police, the one policewoman who was really nice to her was saying, even if you are right, we don't have any concrete evidence to go on. So she's like, I'll get him to confess. I'll record him. Mm-hmm. I'll do what I have to do. And I do like that when she goes down there. You know, she gets there. Apparently, she's supposed to have been at work for the past hour. And Carol and the other bartender, where have you been? You've got a customer down there. And yeah, she goes down the stairs, and Lindsay, the silver-haired gentleman, is sitting down there just jamming out to Eloise by Barry Ryan, waiting for her. Just so creepy. Why is he so creepy?
I don't know.
He could have helped so many things if he wouldn't have been so creepy.
You know, he played General Zod in Superman 2.
Oh, yeah? Terrence Stamp?
Yep. Way back. In the Wayback Machine.
Yeah.
So she's recording the conversation on her phone.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I talked a little bit about, what he had said.
Yeah, and he basically, he's telling her, you know, Sandy was special. He tried to take care of them, all of this. But they all look the same on a slab.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he didn't help himself. He didn't do himself any favors by some of the things he was saying. I do think...
it was antagonistic a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, because he was even with Ellie, you know, knowing her name, and, I make it my business to know all the pretty girls around here. And...
that's why they called him Hansy.
Yeah, Hansy, which was a little nod to his actual name that was kind of in the background. Lindsay, Hansy. It's close. That's why he got that nickname.
Yeah.
But just saying these little things, you know, saying, I know where you live. This is whenever she's down there trying to record him. And, you know, I know where you live. And, you know, and Sandy ended up exactly where she wanted. And it's like, why are you saying these things that are could be easily misconstrued as threats but I think maybe he doesn't want to show his hand too much because he thinks maybe Ellie does know the actual truth. And so he doesn't want to tip too much because he's like, well, maybe I can use this conversation to find out the evidence I need to put Sandy away.
And he's trying to be so careful with it. He's really trying to just tread carefully. But in the end, it didn't end up well for him.
Yeah, because, you know, he says, you know, he looked up her old bones, and some people don't want to be found, which I guess, I mean, when he came back, so I'm assuming he knows where Miss Collins is now.
I think so.
He just doesn't have the evidence for anything. Because when he says, I know where you live, I mean, he's meaning with Sandy.
Yeah.
So he hasn't really pieced together what Ellie knows and doesn't know.
And he always flips back and forth between Alex and Sandy. Like they're two different people when they're not. Yeah,
and I think he kind of means that in the way that Miss Collins or Sandy does when she says that later. Because when Ellie says, you know, but you killed her. And he goes, oh, you think I killed Sandy? Because I know you did. He says, I think you'll find Alex killed Sandy. And that can be taken in two different ways, depending on where you're looking at it from. Like Ellie in that moment is looking at it as him saying, she asked for what she got. She deserved it. But actually, probably what he's meaning is Mrs. Collins, Alex, killed the identity of Sandy when she's laid low and secluded herself and kind of, you know,
disappeared.
And also was killing, you know, and then what Miss Collins says is, yeah, you're probably right. A girl did die up there, died every single night when she had to just become somebody completely different and go into this whole different mode.
Yeah, she said she had young Sandy died up there. She had hopes and dreams and wanted to be a singer and perform. And to be a whore, you have to pretend you're someone else, not yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when she's having the conversation with Ellie, who has decided she wants to go home. Ms. Collins says that she put a knife in Jack 100 times. And it felt right. And all the bastards who come around creeping up the stairs, they sent me to hell, so I sent them to theirs. I did everyone a favor. I wasn't going to be used anymore.
Yeah. So good.
So good. Diana Rigg.
Yeah. Man.
Diana Rigg. Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. I like some of the stuff that Lindsay says. Also, when he's leaving, he's like, I'm done with this line of questioning.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, you know, you think she was an angel, but don't be fooled. And, you know, he's saying all these little things that make sense in, you know, context once you look at it from backwards. You know, it's like right before I guess he dies. It's another ambiguous thing.
Yeah,
we don't
they
know
never
for
tell
sure.
us what happened.
But that last thing he says before getting hit by the taxi is, when you see Alex in whatever little hell she's currently in, you tell her I said hello.
Yeah. And then he's hit.
Yeah, after Ellie was almost hit by taxis several times throughout this movie.
She was.
Her distracting Lindsay was what caused him to actually get hit by one. And that's, Carol comes out, reveals his identity to Ellie, and then she kind of puts together all the pieces and realizes exactly who he was and that she had everything wrong. And so that's where she's overloaded and is like,
I have to go home.
Fuck this. I'm out. I'm done.
Yep.
I need to go home.
And John takes her back to the house so she can tell Ms. Collins that she is sorry, but she's decided to go home. And that's when, looking through some mail, because an envelope came for Ellie, it all starts to come to life.
Yeah, I like that little, because it shows it as a reveal a little bit later, but the first time, if you just have to catch it, as she's flipping through the letters and you see the mail addressed to Miss Alexandra Collins. It's like, oh,
yeah. You don't think about it. And then you see it and you're like, oh, yeah. Unfortunately, even though Miss Collins was being very hospitable and given Ellie some tea, it wasn't just tea that she gave her. She actually had spiked something in it.
Yeah.
Her plan was to make sure that Ellie wasn't going to tell anyone else.
Yeah.
But she wasn't going to stab her. She was going to have her just go to sleep.
Yeah, which is such a brutal thing because she says, and then everybody's going to think that you killed yourself. It's like, which they all expect you to do anyway. It's like, damn. She's probably got to be tired of being told that or hearing that about herself, but
yeah,
it's brutal. But yeah, and then I loved then going back and seeing all these little hints about the character of Miss Collins. Of course, we get, when we first see her rules, no smoking. Well, no males after 8. Well, she's got a good reason for the no men visiting in the room. She's dealt with a lot of trauma of men in that room at nighttime. No nighttime laundry. That's just a personal thing.
I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah, they go into the room and it's a bit old fashioned. It's like, well, Ellie's very into that, luckily, so you're good there. Mm-hmm. One of the lines that I thought was really crazy, I picked up on after the first watch. I thought back to it. I was like, oh wow, they planted seeds early. Is Miss Collins saying you don't have to worry about it until the summer, but then you'll have to keep the plugs in because all the smells rise up.
Yeah, and you're thinking it might be because of a restaurant. Yeah. But it's really that everything is under the floorboards.
Yeah, it's the bodies that she's hidden. And then she also, when she's like, yeah, I inherited this place. I bought it dirt cheap from the previous owner. And then mentioned something about, you could probably get a good price for it now because the neighborhood's better. And she goes, oh, I could never sell it. Too many memories.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, those and maybe all the bodies hidden in the walls and floorboards. Yes. That might do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think the property value will be there.
Yeah.
Too many secrets.
Yeah. I mean, other than, the murder history, it seems like a pretty nice place. Although, 2 months rent in advance and 2 months deposit.
That's yikes. A lot.
That is, just because I've had people just take off in the middle of the night. That's why. Mrs.
I don't
Collins,
blame them.
I would never do that. Cut immediately to her taking off from the dorm in the middle of the night.
Yes.
Thought that was funny. But like I said, she has good personal reason for no male visitors overnight. Mm-hmm. It was not a good time for her when those things were happening.
Yeah. When we got to the end and Ms. Collins comes in the door, Ellie's on the bed. She says, I didn't want any of this. They deserved it. I'm not going to prison. I've been in prison all my life. And then she slits her throat. But it doesn't kill her. It's just a little bit.
She tries to, but Ellie takes it from her before
she can complete the job.
Yeah. Okay, stops her from killing herself. But then Sandy, she's kind of realized there's no point in ruining any more lives, that everything's a mess, and it is what it is at this point. And then luckily Ellie kind of has thrown up whatever poison or something. She didn't drink a whole lot of the tea, so she's okay there. But then Sandy, at this point, we can call her that, just decides to send Ellie out, says, save yourself, save the boy. And they, get them out of that burning building, and she just stays behind, sits on the bed, and faces her end there.
Yeah. Crazy. This poor girl who had a huge dream to go become a huge fashion designer, and this is her experience in London. But what we do learn is it doesn't break her, and she sticks around, because we get this kind of, not epilogue, but I guess it kind of is like an epilogue.
Yeah.
We see her being the star of the fashion show for school with dresses that are similar to what Sandy was wearing, but with a twist.
Yeah. Which is also the music playing downtown with a modern beat twist. So it's kind of this.
It's cool. And we see, Ellie, her teacher's telling her what a great job she did. And Ellie goes down back and she looks in the mirror and she sees her mom. And John and her grandmother come back to tell her, what a wonderful job she did. Mm-hmm. And then her grandmother actually says to her, your mom would be very proud. And then Ellie turns to the mirror and doesn't see her mother.
Yeah.
She instead sees Sandy.
Mm-hmm. Who's kind of watching over her as well now.
Mm-hmm.
There's also one other reflection in a mirror that's not a dead person, but I just caught that I thought was kind of fun. Is also you get a little reflection in one of the mirrors of Jocasta silently clapping for her.
Oh, yes.
Like, okay. It's like, okay, like she's giving her a little props because it was good, but clearly they're probably still not on very good speaking terms with each other. Maybe might not ever be.
Other girls are coming up to her and telling her how good that she did. Do you have any other notes?
I will look real quick because we kind of jumped around, so make sure that we didn't skip over anything super awesome and important, but I think we probably did. One thing that I thought was interesting is that day in school, she's sitting there because Jocasta points out that there is a hickey left on Ellie's neck from the encounter. I was just
looking at that note on mine.
Yeah, which I think is pretty interesting. They don't really go further into it, but it's another one of those little hints that's saying, because I know there's people online, they're wondering, it's like, oh, what was this whole movie maybe, kind of gaslighting us a little bit, and actually what it is she's just schizophrenic, and this didn't happen, or that didn't happen. But I think with the hickey thing, it's like a little hint that, like, no.
Yeah.
Everything that happened actually happened. Mm-hmm. Let's see. If I have anything else, this is my note-looking song.
Well, this was a movie that we were both looking really forward to covering because there were so many cool things in it. Yeah,
that's pretty much most of the notes. I said, random little notes about, like, Jocasta. Like I said, just some of the funny things, just hearing her talk early in the movie to her friends. Like, she's so airheaded when talking about, like, well, mostly anything. She's like, I dated this Irish guy. Or no, it was like, I dated an Irishman twice. Well, it was the same guy, but we went on 2 dates. But I feel like I really know the Irish culture now because of, like, just stupid things like that. You're like, oh my God.
Dumb. She was just dumb.
John going to the pub to see her, knowing that she works there after that little meltdown at the school, was just really sweet. And I think that was really cool.
He was really sweet. Who knew Mayhem was going to grow up to be such a nice guy?
Yeah. And then, I have 2 other notes that are not story related, but just little things. I love the very opening of the movie before we get Ellie in her newspaper dress is just the words "for Diana," which, because this was Diana Rigg's final movie.
It was.
And then, just talking about the music itself. Unfortunately, the official score, if you find it, doesn't have this included. It's just the music. But if you're watching the movie, the score is also interspersed with a lot of instances of little loops of dialogue. There's always things that Sandy and Jack said that just resonate and are looping through the music. The one that jumps out to me the most is the alley scene where she's running through the rain and all these ghosts are coming in on her and Jack is showing up and she's trying to follow Sandy. And Jack comes around a corner and yells, "Hey!" And then as the music's going, you hear this, "Hey! Hey! Hey!" And it's going in time with the beat of the music. And it's just very subtle and it's in there. But like the dialogue and the words become part of the music. And then there's parts where she's like going up and down the stairs at Miss Collins' place and you hear, "You know where to find me. You know where to find me. You know," and from in Sandy's voice. And it's all these little things that the dialogue is looped into the music through a lot of the movie. And I thought that was incredible.
That is awesome.
It's these things that she heard in these visions and dreams that become part of the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. Gotta love Edgar Wright. He just puts it together.
Yeah.
He makes it special. He understands that music is a character all its own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we've said before when we talk about other directors that understand that. But I don't know that anyone quite gets it as much as he does.
Yeah.
Again, I picture him sitting or laying in a hammock, letting these ideas cook in his head. I can't wait to see what he's going to come up with next.
Absolutely.
It's going to be great.
He's working on a few things, I do know. He is working on a few things.
Not the Scott Pilgrim reunion tour.
That might be cool. Yeah, he's got, let's see, Baby Driver 2 is still in development.
What?
More rumor, because Edgar Wright is
being truthful about that.
Because Edgar Wright is known to not really care for sequels much, but it is officially on IMDb, at least as a rumored thing, so take it with a grain of salt.
You're serious?
Yes. I'm serious. It's there, but again, take it with a grain of salt because
I never even imagined.
Again, he's got a sci-fi project called Collider right now that's in development. Not much known about it. An animated thing. So there's a lot of in development stuff that has no actual information on it. Mm-hmm. So just these little projects that he is working on. Yeah, there's a ton of them that are all in development. Only one is actually in production right now. Yeah, the only one in production, directed by Edgar Wright, so it should be his next project, is a sci-fi project right now titled The Running Man. So, I guess, is it a remake? I don't know. Yeah, it looks like it, because, futuristic United States of 2025, which isn't that far away, where the world has become a dystopia. So, it might just be a Running Man remake, which he doesn't usually do remakes either, so...
If it can be better than the original...
That could be interesting.
I'll be in on that. Because I didn't like the original.
So as I was saying, I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing, so... Maybe he's doing a remake on that. Usually remakes, I'm like, but if it's Edgar Wright, then yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. That's kind of like the be-all, end-all.
Mm-hmm.
If he's involved, then we better check it out.
Yeah.
At least give it 10 minutes. To see where it's going.
Well, so if he's involved, it's going to be good. So
it's going to be good.
Matter.
It has to be good.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I feel like we've had a really fun discussion on this film. Are you ready to hear what I've uncovered for production notes?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, originally, the film was titled Red Light Area, but Wright didn't want the movie to be confused with Cillian Murphy's Red Lights. He also thought of calling it The Night Has 1,000 Eyes, but that was also a title of a film. So the title that he ended up with came up in a conversation that he had with Quentin Tarantino about Death Proof, and Tarantino asked Wright if he'd ever heard the song Last Night in Soho. The title of the film comes from this pop song, Last Night in Soho, by the band Dave D, Dozy, Beaky, Mick, and Tyke. And it plays in the end credits on the film. Wright was inspired by his parents' stories from the 1960s. He originally, as I said, pitched this idea 10 years ago. And he did the same thing with Baby Driver, only he kind of let it cook for 22 years before he filmed it. Wow. Cinematographer Chung Chung-hoon previously worked on 2003's Old Boy, as well as Andy Muschietti's It, and he's also part of the upcoming Uncharted film. As with all of Edgar Wright's films, especially Baby Driver, the soundtrack is its own character, and each of the songs were selected by him with specific scenes in mind. Wright has a history of casting actors from James Bond films in key roles. He cast ex-Bonds Timothy Dalton in Hot Fuzz, and Pierce Brosnan in The World's End. And there were other little references to Bond films peppered throughout Last Night in Soho.
Like the Vesper.
Yes, and I believe when Ellie first arrives in the 60s, the movie that's playing, I think, is Thunderball.
Yeah.
And it's
the Sean Connery one. Yeah.
So Thomasin McKenzie dropped out of Top Gun Maverick to star in this film. And director George Miller, who is directing the Mad Max spin-off Furiosa, saw an early cut of this movie and cast Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa. So that could be pretty good.
I guess it's supposed to be a prequel then to Fury Road.
Yes. It is. It's a prequel. So, the end credit shots of the deserted London streets were filmed during England's lockdown, and they were really on lockdown there. Stephen King saw an advanced screening of Last Night in Soho, was impressed with the film, tweeting, "I hardly ever rewatch. There's so many good things out there, but this one is special." And finally, these were the final performances of Diana Rigg and Margaret Nolan, who both died in 2020. Rigg's health continued to decline during the final filming, so Edgar Wright actually went to her while she was in her sickbed to record the looping voiceover for her character about 2 weeks before she passed away.
Wow.
He called filming with her a beautiful experience, and the film opens with For Diana and ends with a dedication to Margaret Nolan in the end credits. And those are the production notes for Last Night in Soho.
We did it!
Yay!
You sure there's not another hour that we can talk about this movie?
I think we could.
Squeeze some stuff in.
We could squeeze more in. I honestly, at one point, was going to keep track of every song that was in the movie and when they played it and why they played it. And then I realized that would make this go on for another hour.
Yeah, that's a lot with an Edgar Wright project.
It is. Because he's very thorough with everything that he does in any film. He's always putting all the extra effort in to make it as special as possible.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that was a lot of fun. I'm so glad we did this movie.
Me too.
So stoked. Yeah.
I was looking forward to it because I just remember how excited we both were after we watched it.
Yeah.
And talked about it. So I knew this would be a really fun podcast.
Yes. All right. But for everybody else out there who watched it and hopefully sent us some fun feedback, I got to know what they had to say. So this feedback phone should be ringing any second now.
Is it?
There it is. All right.
So
it usually knows when to show up. We've got the spiritual connection, me and the feedback phone, so it knows.
We've fine-tuned this over the last 30 or 40 episodes since we started doing it.
Yeah. All right. I should probably go answer it before it starts busting up through the floorboards. Let me go get it.
Yes. Oh!
All right. We've got a little bit of feedback this week. We have our live Steving from last week that we didn't get. He came through, followed it up. So we'll start with that. Start with some Jurassic World. Because we've got to know what Steve has to say about that one.
Hello, Pake and Daphne. This is Steve, and this is for Jurassic World. Yeah, the first one's just Jurassic World. Yeah. It's been a while since I watched it, so it'd be a fun watch, I think. Hey, isn't that Phil Dunphy? Wait, is this a Christmas movie? I totally forgot. Oh, I guess not. Just kind of looked like him. But no one's impressed with the dinosaur anymore? Hey, isn't that the guy from the first movie? I guess he got off the island, huh? And he wasn't in Lost World or Jurassic 3? B.D. Wong. That's the actor. He was on one of the Law and Orders or something like that. I love Jake Johnson. That first part was legit. Owen doesn't know about the Indominus Rex. I cannot wait to hear you talk about Vincent D'Onofrio's character. How small is that raptor enclosure? It looks like it's only like 100 feet or something. In my bungalow. Well, it's out now. Not only is Vincent D'Onofrio a jerk, he's also a traitor. Jerk is probably not the right word. He's probably just way too proud of himself. Sorry, Claire, but I believe you're not in control either, and non-lethal ain't gonna work. It was uncalled for, Owen. You didn't have to wipe all of his dinosaurs off his desk. Pause on that count on the wall, and I'm pretty sure she said 22,216, right? Oh, that's the visitor count. Okay. Hey, here's a great idea. Let's put the guests in a round ball that the dinosaurs can bounce around. We're supposed to disembark the ride and return to the resort. They're in a bubble. Of course, the boys are not going to be the only ones who are going to disregard this ride closed, return to the resort thing. Seriously, they're the only ones who disregarded it. Dominatrix, what is it called? Or the T-Rex? What do you call them? The ankylosaurus? Oh, he just ate that dinosaur's head. Oh, is the Dominatrix going to go bowling?
The Dominatrix.
It's not killing for food, it's just killing. One just said it's killing for sport. I was with the Navy, not the Navajo. Oh, so are they on the same island as the first movie or the second movie? Just found one of these original buildings. What a douchey line. We don't need anyone else. That can't be good, letting the birds out. Well, General, this is not going to end well for you. We're going to need some more boss guys. And now is when the running and the screaming starts. Well, I guess she just saved his life, so she deserves a kiss. No, him. We want to stay with him. Oh, and I think a new alpha might have just been found by the raptors. Oh, no, the raptors have turned on them. Oh, which raptor that was, they just blew up, but it looked like it was starting to connect with Owen. I love Jake Johnson. I don't remember if he survives or not. You're going to get it now. There's a raptor in the room with you, Vincent D'Onofrio. Now, she's releasing the T-Rex. And here comes Blue. And the Mandiblesaurus in the water got him. He survived. Well, that was really good. It's been a while since I watched it. And I don't know. I may wait till you cover Jurassic World. What is it? Fallen Kingdom? Mm-hmm. Until I watch the next one. All right. Talk to you later.
Wow.
Awesome. That was so much fun. Not to make fun of you, Steve, but that was great. I love, so the Mandiblesaurus is great. And also the Dominatrix. It would be a very different movie. But I love it.
It would be a very different movie. That would be the Mosasaurus and the Indominus Rex.
Yeah. But I like it. I like these terms too.
Yeah, it's fun. So
that was great. Love a good live Steve. And we get another one later. So
yeah. How did we get so lucky?
I know. Double dose of live Steving this week. It's a post-Christmas miracle.
It is.
Excited.
Thank you, Santa.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into some feedback this week for Last Night in Soho.
So I'm going to take the first one. It's from our good friend Jerry. He said, very simply, Diana Rigg and Anya Taylor-Joy were so fucking awesome in this movie, especially Rigg.
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
And then, of course, Tony's coming through for us. And she says, I liked this film. I thought it was beautifully shot and the music was amazing. It was a slow burn. My daughter and my husband complained, but I was completely entertained. Can't wait to hear what you think of the ending. Looks like Eloise is still being haunted. Is it a welcomed haunt, like her muse, or a, oh fudge, why are you still here kind of possession? It's a good question. It's left a little open-ended, but I feel like she's okay with it.
Yeah, I'd like to think it's a welcome haunt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel she's going to be her muse.
Yeah. They had their little moment there at the end. I mean, it came right off the heels of a very violent "I'm gonna murder you" moment, but then it was I don't know. I think it's okay.
Yeah, I do too. That's what we think, and we're sticking to it.
Yes. And then, like I said, we do get some live Steving for this movie as well. I'm interested to see what he says.
I know. Here we go.
Hey, Pake and Daphne, this is Steve, and this is going to be for Last Night in Soho. I saw it in the movie theater, so it's been a while, but it was really good, I thought. I remember when I first saw this, I didn't know what time frame we were in, because this old music is playing, which is great soundtrack, by the way, and she's got this dress on, yeah. Image disappears from the mirror just before she turns around, so you know it wasn't a real person standing there. This girl's method of packing, you need socks, just dumps the drawer in. She just lied about not seeing her mom in ages. Hallucinations have been a problem before. Creepy cab driver. Put the subtitles on. This dialogue is just so fast. Sometimes I'm missing a lot of words. First impression, dude, you drank her Coke. So she's just started. I think it's a dream, right? But her reflection hasn't changed yet to the other woman. Walking down the stairs into the club. I doubt that. This camera work and editing is so good with the reflections. Yeah. That dance scene was amazing. Between Sandy and Ellie and this scene where they're running up the stairs, it's all just great. Oh, a physical manifestation from the dream, a hickey on her neck. She found the Rialto in real life. Oh, and we have Terrence Stamp. Nice. It's like a burlesque kind of club. Oh, wow, there's a whole bunch going on backstage that I don't remember from the first time seeing it. Ooh. Oh, that was scary with the guy grabbing her hand. And this is where the movie is really starting to get that dark turn to it. And it's really good, though. Different names, all these different guys. And now she's talking to this one that she does tell her name is Sandy, and she calls him a copper. This is important. I don't remember. Oh, I remember with the twist now. Yeah. Notice, is that a lock on the outside of her door? It's the bathroom. She went into the bathroom when she saw the ghost. That's right. Now, so much foreshadowing that now on this second watch, seeing all this about ghosts in the house and they're dressing up like ghosts. Line between hallucination and ghosts or whatever, this psychology of her is just fascinating and terrifying. Visions that she's seeing, I don't know which. Well, she's got a clever answer for every question that Ellie asks, doesn't she? Oh, someone's died in every room in this city in London. I mean, the twist that happens with Terrence Stamp now, but I did not see it coming at all the first time I watched the movie. Oh, now she's starting to see the men and the ghosts are coming back around again. Remember how this scene in the library goes with her running away, but she's got the scissors. She almost stabbed that girl. Good thing John was there. Ooh, every time. I know it's just the second time, but man, Terrence Stamp getting hit by that cab. Oh, pretty proud of myself when I saw this in the theater that I caught her first name as being Alexandra from the Mail. It's gone kind of long. I'm going to finish the movie, but can't wait to hear you guys talk about it.
All right. Awesome.
Thank you, Steve.
Love it. 2 great live Steves in one episode.
I know. Double packed for this week. Well,
yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for sending in your feedback. If you would like to submit feedback, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/runforyourlivespodcast. You can email us at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. Send us a message on Twitter at RFYL Podcast. Reach us on Instagram at runforyourlivespodcast. And if you're enjoying the show, tell your friends. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much all the other podcast players, including YouTube. Go to runforyourlivespodcast.com for all the links you'll ever need and give us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that's the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Speaking of sharing the love, what's going on in the podcast universe around us? My other podcast, Strange Indeed, we just wrapped up Dexter, New Blood, this week with a great 3-hour finale podcast episode. So much to talk about and so much feedback and so much great stuff. It was awesome. That show, I'm still coping with that show ending, but it was great. I loved it personally. I loved the run, loved what it was. So yeah, definitely check that out if you're a fan of that. And now we're going to be off for a few weeks as I've got a vacation coming up and Rima is doing some work covering Cobra Kai over on House Podcastica. So she's still got that going on. So we're going to take a little bit and then we'll jump into something new. Don't take my word 100% for it, but I think we're going to go ahead and circle back around to You, Season 3 on Netflix. I am binging through the first 2 seasons and catching up on it. I'm really liking it so far, so that might be the direction we go. But if you have any ideas or stuff on what you think we should do with Strange Indeed, give us any recommendations over there. Hit us up on our socials and stuff over on that one, and we're open to some thoughts. But speaking of House Podcastica, like I did, yes, Cobra Kai is back, Season 4, so Rima, Jason, and Rich are covering that. But also, Book of Boba Fett is going, and they are covering that on House Podcastica. And Yellow Jackets is coming up on its finale this week.
Can't believe it.
And yeah, and that will be Daphne, Jason, and Wendy.
So excited to have our Handmaid's Tale crew back together to talk about the finale for this show. it's definitely kept us on our toes the whole time. And I'm just excited to see how the season ends, but I'm not looking forward to the break from it. Because I know it's going to leave, it might answer some questions, but it's going to leave me with more. So it's going to be fun anyway. It's always a fun conversation.
Yeah, that's such a good show. Definitely check that out if you haven't been watching it. It's so good. But that's not the only thing that you have coming up in the podcast universe yourself on Podcastica. You got something else fun coming up within the next week as well, right?
I do. We're doing a Women of Podcastica episode coming up. We're going to be talking about all things games, geeky, anything fun and cool. And we're going to have an Ask Me Anything segment. It's myself, Wendy, Rima, and Lucy. So I'm really excited to get to podcast the four of us on this. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, and that's going to be on the Walking Dead cast feed?
I believe so, yes.
And then on the TV Podcast Industries network over there, check them out. They're doing their wrap-up of 2021 and preview of 2022. Those guys work so hard putting out so many episodes of great shows. They cover so many things, all of the great like Marvel stuff and Star Wars and different superhero things and all kinds of comic book adaptations. They're all over so many great things. So if there's something kind of comic booky and unique that is out there and you need a podcast for it, if you don't know of anybody covering it, go check out TV Podcast Industries. There's a good chance they might be.
Yes, for sure.
And then finally over on Wilhelm, Ben and Jason getting together to do their Best of the Year for 2021 episode, where they'll be recapping the best of movies and TV from the past year.
Yeah.
And they're, for the first time, Wilhelm is taking feedback, so
I know.
I think they've already recorded at this point, so you might be a little late on that feedback, but you'll get to also hear what other Wilhelm listeners have been really enjoying or what they enjoyed the most over this last year as well.
Yeah, I actually sent in feedback for that because there were a few things that stuck out to me this past year that I wanted to mention, so.
Yep. And then right here on Run for Your Lives next week, Daphne, what is going on? What are we doing?
Well, in the post-apocalyptic future of 2020.
Oh, wow. Throwing it way into the future.
Christian Bale and Gerard Butler try to keep their community safe from fire-breathing dragons and the occasional poorly executed outings of their flock members. We are going all the way back to 2002 to discuss the Rob Bowman film Reign of Fire.
Mm-hmm. And an interesting one.
Yes.
For sure.
It's pretty striking how young they all look because it was 19 years ago when it was released. So it's been a while.
But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's fun one to talk about.
You know what? It's always fun when you're talking about dragons.
Right.
Anything, dragons, dinosaurs, sharks. It's a monster movie.
Yeah.
And with that, we've reached the end of another fun-filled episode. Although, maybe it was a bit creepy this time.
Yeah, but it was great.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pate.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.